Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian, I'm Ian the Reader, and today I am back with another episode of Box Talks. If you're new to the channel or new to this series, in this collection of videos, I discuss upcoming releases, typically books that are coming out the next month, so it's July, and I'm talking about books that are coming out in August of 2022, that are exciting to me, that are in a lot of different genres, and specifically books that I think could be featured in the Book of the Month monthly box. Book of the Month is an amazing book subscription box that is super affordable, and it allows you to pick from 5 to 7 brand new releases every single month. You can also skip a month if you're not into the books that are featured, and in addition to that, there is a huge catalog of older books that have been featured beforehand that you can choose as add-ons for only $10 each. It's a great and affordable way to get brand new hardback books, and I think it is super awesome. There's a link to join down below if you have never done it before. You can use my referral link to get a discounted first month. But like I said, in this video, I'm going to be talking about my August predictions for Book of the Month, or just really exciting August books that I want you to hear about that I think are worth being on your TBR. As always, there are chapters for this video, so you can skip around to whichever genres interest you the most, rather than having to sit through this super long video. And then in addition to that, I will do a brief synopsis from Goodreads for each of these books, but it's very briefly going to touch on what this book is about. And if you want to learn more, there are links down below to each of these books on Goodreads. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with mystery and thriller. So Book of the Month has already posted a hint on their website and app, so it has been quite obviously revealed that the first book that is being featured in Book of the Month's August box is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. So I'm not going to count that as one of my predictions because it's already there, so like that feels like cheating, but I did just want to mention that this book is a really exciting upcoming release from a very well-known mystery thriller author, and if you're into mystery thrillers, you're definitely not going to want to miss Alice Feeney's new book. Let's move on to my other predictions, though, because Book of the Month does like to feature multiple thrillers a lot of times, either as main picks or as add-ons, so I do want to talk about some other August releases in the mystery thriller genre. So first we have Stay Awake by Megan Golden. This is an author who has been featured before. I believe her last book was called The Night Swim. I think that's what it was called, and it was featured in Book of the Month, and it was quite popular. I do think it was actually the most popular choice the month that it was selected, so this is definitely a book that I could see them featuring. Here's the short description from Goodreads. Liv Reese wakes up in the back of a taxi with no idea where she is or how she got there. When she's dropped off at the door of her brownstone, a stranger answers, a stranger who now lives in her apartment and forces her out in the cold. She reaches for her phone to call for help, only to discover it's missing, and in its place is a blood-stained knife. That's when she sees that her hands are covered in black pen, scribbled messages like graffiti on her skin. Stay awake. What? I mean, that sounds so good. Like, wow. I mean, I kind of knew what this was about, but this is my first time actually reading the whole, portion of the description. And oh my gosh, this book sounds incredible. I am dying to read it. I really, really hope it's a Book of the Month selection, and if not, I'm going to be picking it up as soon as possible. So this currently has a 4.09 with over 2,000 ratings on Goodreads, so it is already quite loved. It comes in at 352 pages, and the release date for it is August 9th, which would be a great release date for an August Book of the Month pick. All right, so next we have The Lost Kings by Tyrell Johnson. This is a book that I had not heard about before jumping in to my research for this video, but I definitely think it could be featured. Here is the brief synopsis on Goodreads. A riveting psychological thriller with a killer twist about a woman forced to confront the darkest moment in her childhood in order to move on from her past and open her heart to love. So this is definitely kind of a generic setup for a book, but I definitely see some promise in it, and it has gotten a lot of great reviews so far. It currently has a 4.28 with 67 ratings. The release date is August 2nd, and it comes in at 336 pages. The third book that I wanted to feature for the genre is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. You may have heard of this author. She came out with a book called In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife a couple of years ago, and this book is high on my TBR. In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife and The Last Housewife. I've heard great things about her debut novel, and this one sounds really great as well. Here is the short description, though. From the author of the acclaimed In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife comes a pitch-black thriller about a woman determined to destroy a powerful cult and avenge the deaths of the women taken by it, no matter the cost. What? I love that. This author has some really great premises for her books. Like I said, if you haven't heard of her debut novel, it does sound really interesting to me, and I definitely plan on picking it up. Currently, it has a 4.29 with 290 ratings, and it comes in just at 400 pages, so it's right there on the kind of the longer side, but not too long. The release date for this is August 16th, and I would be so happy if it was a Book of the Month pick. So that concludes the mystery and thriller genre. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to historical fiction. So, my first pick for historical fiction is The Two Lives of Sarah, a novel. This is by Catherine Adele West and has been getting quite a bit of buzz on Instagram. I've seen it a few times on there and people are loving it so far. Here is the short description. A young mother finds refuge and friendship at a boarding house in 1960s Memphis, Tennessee, where family encompasses more than just blood and hidden truths can bury you or set you free. This definitely seems like it is going to be a very emotionally impactful story. It follows a woman who is down on her luck, is pregnant, and is just looking for some new home and family, and I definitely can see that happening in this story. I think it's going to be a great book. Currently, it has a 4.27 on Goodreads. The release date is September 6th, so it is definitely a little bit early. Like I said, I typically feature August picks, but because this is an upcoming book, and the author also wrote Saving Ruby King, which was quite well received, I could definitely see this being featured in August instead of September, or it could be in September. We'll see what happens, but I did want to feature it this month, and it comes in at 320 pages. The second book for historical fiction that I wanted to feature is The Codebreaker's Secret. We have another World War II fiction book, which is exciting. We all love that, right? The premise for this does sound really interesting, though. Here it is. A brilliant female codebreaker, an unbreakable Japanese naval code, a pilot on a top-secret mission that could change the course of World War II. The Codebreaker's Secret is a dazzling story of love and intrigue set during America's darkest hour. So this is a historical fiction novel, but it definitely seems to have some very thrilling aspects to it as well, which I always do enjoy in my World War II fiction. I love the emotional angle and all of the important details that are involved with that, but seeing this as kind of like almost like a spy thriller kind of book, but in a historical fiction setting, I think that is really cool. This currently has a 4.40 on Goodreads with 87 ratings. The release date is August 2nd, and it comes in at 384 pages. And the last of my historical fiction picks is a book that it feels weird that it's historical fiction because it's set in like the 90s. I don't think of that as historical fiction, but I guess that it totally is. Anyway, this is a very, very hyped book. This author's been featured numerous times, and I think we are all hoping that this book is a pick. That book is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. She is one of the most popular authors out there right now, having written The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Malibu Rising, and a bunch of books before those. She is definitely one of the buzziest authors out there, which makes me a little bit nervous as to whether or not it'll be featured because she's gotten so big. They have featured a lot of her books before, but I could see it going either way, honestly, but I did still want to talk about it. So here's the short description. It says, in this powerful novel about the cost of greatness, a legendary athlete attempts a comeback when the world considers her past her prime, from the New York Times bestselling author of Malibu Rising. So this book follows Carrie Soto, who is a character who has been featured in a previous Taylor Jenkins Reid book, that being Malibu Rising, which I actually read and loved last year. So I am excited to see what Taylor Jenkins Reid does with this character in her own story. She's a tennis player, like I said, and she's out of her prime, but she's wanting to really gain back her glory. I think this is going to be a really exciting book, and I am excited to read it. It currently has a 4.51, which is amazing, and it has over 1,800 ratings on Goodreads, so it is definitely well received. This does come out August 30th, and the page count for this is 384. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to be featured, and if it is, it might actually be featured in September instead of August, because this is such a buzzy release. I could definitely see them not wanting to release it early. That being said, I did not want to rule it out, so I did include it for August. That is all for historical fiction, though. Let's go ahead and jump into fantasy and science fiction. Okay, so first is a book that I would be absolutely shocked if it was featured. It's a book that I am so excited for, that a lot of us in the fantasy and sci-fi community are super pumped for, but I would be a little bit surprised if it was featured, but very excited anyway. That book is Babel, or The Necessity of Violence, an Arcane History of the Oxford Translators' Revolution by R.F. Kuang. If you are a fantasy lover, you have probably heard of R.F. Kuang. She wrote the Poppy War trilogy, which is super dark and intense and awesome. I've read the first book. I've heard it just gets darker from there, and I have been emotionally preparing myself to jump back into that trilogy at some point, but this book has been getting crazy good reviews, and I am so hyped about it. Here's the short description from Goodreads. 1828. Robin Swift, orphaned by cholera in Canton, is brought to London by the mysterious Professor Lovell. There he trains for years in Latin, Ancient Greek, and Chinese, all in preparation for the day he'll enroll in Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, also known as Babel. Babel is the world's center of translation and, more importantly, of silverworking, Silverworking, the art of manifesting the meaning lost in translation through enchanted silver bars to magical effect. Silverworking has made the British Empire unparalleled in power, and Babbel's research in foreign languages serves the Empire's quest to colonize everything it encounters. I'm not going to dig too much deeper into it, but there's a lot going on here, and I highly encourage you to check out the Goodreads description for this one. That being said, it is like a historical fantasy, but also focused on kind of like dark academia, and also set in London, which is super cool. There's just a lot of good things going for this book, and I am so excited about it. Can you tell I'm excited? I'm so excited. Like I said, this has been getting great reviews. It currently has a 4.58 with 745 ratings, so it's doing very well for itself. It comes out August 23rd, so it would be a bit of an early release, and it comes in at 560 pages. So there are a lot of things going against this book, but I love the idea of it. I love the author, and I'm super excited about it, so I just had to feature it. But moving into some more probably realistic territory, our second pick for fantasy and science fiction is Small Angels by Lauren Owen. This book is described as kind of like a horror fantasy, so I'm super pumped about that, and here's the short description. A wedding in a small English village attracts a malicious spirit, forcing deep secrets to surface, a hypnotic tale of sisterhood, first love, and hauntings. Woohoo! I'm super drawn in by that premise. It sounds super mysterious and dark and fascinating, and I am here for it. It just sounds great. I'm gonna read it. This currently has a 4.32 on Goodreads with 68 ratings. It comes in exactly at 400 pages, and the release date is August 2nd. I could really see this one being featured for Book of the Month. It has a lot of different appeals for it, whether it's the love aspect or the sisterhood aspect or the fantasy or horror aspect. There's just a lot going on here that I think is very appealing, and yeah, I'm excited. And the third and final book that I wanted to feature for fantasy and science fiction is The Drowned Wood by Emily Lloyd Jones. Here's the short description from Goodreads. Once upon a time, the kingdoms of Wales were rife with magic and conflict. An 18-year-old Mererid, I don't know how to say that. Mare, it actually is abbreviated because the author knows that this is a hard name to say. Mare is well acquainted with both. She is the last living water diviner and has spent years running from the prince who bound her into his service. Under the prince's orders, she located the wells of his enemies, and he poisoned them without her knowledge, causing hundreds of deaths. After discovering what he had done, Mare went to great lengths to disappear from his reach. Then Mare's old handler returns with a proposition: use her powers to bring down the very prince that abused them both. So this is a YA fantasy, which is not unheard of for them to feature. They have featured YA fantasy before, so I could definitely see it being featured. That being said, this does lean very heavily into the fantasy aspects, which I know Book of the Month doesn't always go for because it may be less appealing to the general audience, while us fantasy lovers are crazy for it. So I'm not sure about this one, but I would be happy if it was featured. This currently has a 4.00 exactly on Goodreads with 320 ratings. The release date is August 16th, and it comes in at 352 pages. And can we just talk about this cover? Like, I love this cover. I think it's awesome. With that, though, let's go ahead and jump into literary and contemporary fiction. So kind of to transition ourselves into the literary fiction genre, we have something that has a bit of a science fiction or magical realism note in there as well, and that book is The Last White Man by Mohsin Hamid. So this is a quite acclaimed author who wrote the book Exit West. I read that book a few years back for a class, and I really did enjoy it. That had magical realism elements in it as well, and this seems like a very important and fascinating work of fiction. Here's the short description. From the New York Times bestselling author of Exit West, a story of love, loss, and rediscovery in a time of unsettling change. One morning, Anders wakes up to find that his skin has turned dark, his reflection a stranger to him. At first, he tells only Una, an old friend, newly a lover. Soon, reports of similar occurrences surface across the land. Some see in the transformations the long-dreaded overturning of an established order to be resisted to a bitter end. And many, like Anders' father and Una's mother, a sense of profound loss wars with profound love. As the bond between Anders and Una deepens, change takes on a different shading, a chance to see one another face to face anew. So this seems like a very impactful work. I do love the introduction of like a magical realism element and the way that that includes social commentary in it and talk about race and all of that jazz. I think this is going to be a very important book and a very exciting book to read. I am really pumped to get to it at some point, and I really do enjoy the cover for this one as well. So this currently has a 3.72 on Goodreads with 162 ratings. Here's the catch though, it only has 192 pages in it. Now, Book of the Month definitely does like to feature shorter books, but that is quite short, being under 200 pages. pages. So it could be featured, it could not be, but I could see it being maybe an add-on at the very least. The release date for this is August 2nd, so it has a great release date for the August book of the month, and I am excited to read this book. Next up, we have When We Were Bright and Beautiful by Jillian Medoff. So this is a book that leans into the family drama, but it also does have a little bit of like mystery, like court, legal drama type of stuff going on with it as well. So here is the short description. Cassie Quinn may only be 23, but she knows a few things. 1, money can't buy happiness, but it's certainly better to have it. 2, family matters most. 3, her younger brother Billy is not a rapist. When Billy, a junior at Princeton, is arrested for assaulting his ex-girlfriend, Cassie races home to Manhattan to join forces with her big brother Nate and their parents, Lawrence and Eleanor. The Quinns scramble to hire the best legal minds money can buy, but Billy fits the all-too-familiar sex offender profile, white, athletic, and privileged, that makes headlines and sways juries. So that is the basic gist of what this story is about. It is also described as an electrifying, twisty, and deeply emotional family drama, which I do know that Book of the Month loves to feature family dramas, so it definitely seems like it could be appealing to them. This currently has a 4.13 with 156 ratings. It comes in at 336 pages, and the release date is August 2nd. And the last book for literary and contemporary fiction that I wanted to talk about is Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. This has been getting some really great reviews, and I am super pumped about it. Here's the short description. From the New York Times best-selling author of Garden Spells comes an enchanting tale filled with magical realism and moments of pure love that won't let you go. Between the real and the imaginary, there are stories that take flight in the most extraordinary ways. Right off the coast of South Carolina on Mallow Island, the Delawisp sits, a stunning old cobblestone building shaped like a horseshoe and named after the tiny turquoise birds who, alongside its human tenants, inhabit an era of magical secrecy. When Zoe comes to claim her deceased mother's apartment on an island outside of Charleston, she meets her quirky and secretive neighbors, including a girl on the run, 2 estranged middle-aged sisters, a lonely chef, a legendary writer, and 3 ghosts. Each with their own story, each with their own longings, each whose ending isn't yet written. So this is a very magical realism heavy book, but it is featured in South Carolina, and there are a lot of contemporary aspects to it as well, so I could see it being defined as like magical realism or fantasy or contemporary, so I did want to include it in this section as well. Like I said, this has been getting some great reviews with 4.33 on Goodreads out of 481 ratings. This book does come out August 30th, so it is a little bit on the later side, but it is at 304 pages, which is a great number of pages for Book of the Month. It's right there in the middle between long and short, which they do love to feature. I'm down for this though. I do love the contemporary aspect mixed with a little bit of like paranormal or magical realism. I'm excited about this book. Now that we are done with those, let's go ahead and move on lastly to the romance genre. Alrighty, so for romance, there is an obvious pick that everyone is hoping for who reads romance, and that book is Love on the Brain by Allie Hazelwood. If you're on like Instagram or TikTok, you probably have seen the love hypothesis all over the place because this book is unavoidable. People are crazy about it. I haven't read it, so I don't know if it's any good, but everybody else seems to love it. This is the new full-length novel by this author. She has been releasing some novellas throughout the year, but this is her new full-length novel, and people are excited about it. It currently has a 4.34 on Goodreads with over 2,000 ratings already, even though it hasn't come out yet, so that's exciting. Here's the short description, though. From the New York Times best-selling author of The Love Hypothesis comes a new STEMinist rom-com in which a scientist is forced to work on a project with her nemesis with explosive results. So you've got the enemies to lovers trope in there, and it definitely has a very romantic comedy type cover on there as well. And like I said, this book is just super buzzy, so I could definitely see it being featured in Book of the Month. The release date for this is August 23rd, and it comes in at 368 pages. Next, we have Lucy Checks In by D. Ernst. Here's the short description from Goodreads. D. Ernst's Lucy Checks In is a delightful work of romantic comedy about a disgraced hotel manager who travels to Venice to rebuild a hotel and her own life in the process. I have not heard a lot about this book, but I have seen it on Instagram at least once or twice. People are enjoying it overall. It does have a 3.67 on Goodreads, which is not the highest score, but it could be worse, with 353 ratings. The page count for this is 288 pages, and it comes out August 16th. And the last book that I'm featuring for the romance genre is Would You Rather by Allison Ashley. Here's the short description for this book on Goodreads. Noah and Mia have always been best friends, and their friendship is the most important thing to them. Life is going great for Noah, and he's up for a promotion in a job he loves. But Mia's life is on hold as she awaits a kidney transplant. She's stuck in a dead-end job and never wanting to be a burden. has sworn off all romance. So when the chance of a lifetime comes to go back to school and pursue her dream, it's especially painful to pass up. She can't quit her job or she'll lose the medical insurance she so desperately needs. To support her, Noah suggests they get married in name only so she can study full-time and still keep the insurance. It's a risk to the both of them, with jobs, health, and hearts on the line, and they'll need to convince suspicious coworkers and nosy roommates that they're the real deal. But if they can let go of all the baggage holding them back, they might realize that they would rather be together forever. So you have like the fake dating trope, except in this case it is fake marriage, which seems like a mistake, but that's just me. On top of that, I think a lot of companies like offer like domestic partners insurance as well, so they could just live to, you know what, that's not the point. Anyway, this currently has a 4.45 on Goodreads with over 100 ratings. It comes out on August 23rd, and the page count is 320. It is quite beloved, so I could definitely see it being featured in the romance genre. But that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what books you were hoping to see in the August Book of the Month box, or which other new releases that I didn't mention in this video are ones that you're excited for August. There are a lot of other books that I'm really excited about that I don't think will be featured, like sequels to books and things like that, but these are the ones that I definitely think could be featured in the Book of the Month box for August. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!